Welcome back to Governance Week 2026, Day 4, as we focus on governance of family-owned businesses and SMEs. As we get started, I'd like to say a very special thank you to our sponsors. We have 3 silver sponsors this year: Unilever from Trinidad and Tobago, the Pan Jamaica Group from Jamaica, and Massey Holdings from here in Trinidad and Tobago. We also have several bronze sponsors, so we thank Republic Bank Limited, First Citizens Bank Limited, and PwC, all from Trinidad and Tobago, as well as GA Rowe and Sons Limited from Belize. And a very special thank you to 2 companies that has offered special associate sponsor contribution, that is Angostura Limited and InfoLink Services Limited. We are very, very appreciative of our financial sponsors for today because you do help us as an NGO in being able to get our work done. Now we move to panel 1 of Governance Week 2026, Day 4. We continue our theme, Governance in a Volatile World. And this particular panel would look at professionalizing the family enterprise, boards, controls, and strategic discipline. We had a very nice introduction and overview of what this panel can look at from our opening presenter this morning, Mr. Brian Imambax. And now we have 3 very experienced people who would be able to take this conversation further. We have Kiran Maharaj, who is the president of the Media Institute of Trinidad and of the Caribbean, Dr. Vishnu Doerga, chairman of Action Invest Caribbean Inc., and Andrea Ball, Chief Financial Officer of DL Financial Services Limited from Jamaica. But their introduction, however, will be performed by our moderator. I'm just helping a little bit because our dear moderator this morning, Angela Leloy, has confessed she's not feeling so well. So, Angela, I am so deeply grateful to you that despite all of this, you're still coming out here to support us. Control, can we spotlight Angela, please, so that I could move forward with the introduction? There we go.
Right.
So,
the flu has been attacking me for the last 3 days, so this is the 4th day, so I'm a little better. So,
okay,
right.
good. So I expect only better health for you. Let me still take 2 minutes and introduce you, Angela. So
Oh,
stay
Lord,
right where
really?
you are. Stay right where you are. So Angela Leloy is the chairman of Aegis Business Solutions Limited, a business outsourcing and advisory services firm, partner of Aegis and Company, an external audit and assurance company. And she's chairman of Recruitment Services, Eve Anderson Recruitment Limited, and Caribbean Resourcing Solutions Limited. Her clients include local and international companies, family businesses, SMEs, private and public companies, and startups across all industries in the Caribbean region. She's a non-executive director and chairman of audit committees of public and private companies spanning banking, insurance, and hospitality industries. In the nonprofit sector, Angela has held several roles as director and chairman of many organizations, including chairman of Music Literacy Trust and the Social Justice Foundation. Angela, just a brief introduction. I know you were so much more, and we are so grateful to have you.
That's a lot longer than it should have been, to be quite honest. All right, I'm not the star here at all. So I will start with Kiran, which I've been told is the president of the Institute of Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago. She's a president of the non-profit Media Institute of the Caribbean, which serves 22 years in the Caribbean. She's also the immediate past president of Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce and a past president of Trinidad and Tobago Publishers and Broadcasters Association. Welcome, Kiran.
Thank you.
Next, I have Dr. Vishnu Doerga. PhD is a chairman of Action Invest Caribbean Inc., an ISO 9001 certified educational institution with a strong background in management, specializing in entrepreneurship. He also holds an MBA and engineering qualification, having served as past president, chairman, and counsel of various Guyanese business support organizations, including the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Guyana Manufacturing and Services Association, the Guyana Office for Investment, and the Guyana National Bureau of Standards, Vishnu has dedicated over 20 years to private sector development. Definitely a guy you need to know, right? If you're in Guyana. So welcome, Vishnu.
Thanks, Angela.
Andrea Bowl. Andrea Bowl is an experienced business consultant professional with more than 20 years of service across banking, financial management, cambio and remittance operations, and compliance. Andrea is also the founder of an independent accounting consultancy practice where she supports small to medium businesses with financial systems management, operational efficiency, tax, compliance, and strategic financial planning. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you.
Now it's over to you all. I've done what I'm supposed to do. So who's going to start? Shall we start in order? Kiran, do you want to start us off?
Anything. I mean, you're also a Business Hall of Fame inductee for the TT Chamber. So
Oh, give me a
you've
break.
been leading. Lead me off.
I don't know. They were desperate for people at that time. Let's
Not
go,
at
Andrea.
all.
Let's go. So you did the
So
introduction.
yeah, so I think that the topic really is asking the question for family-owned businesses, at what point do we separate our, I guess, our family logic from what is our business logic is a matter of separating, your heart and your emotion and getting more towards the intellect. And I think that the topic is very relevant right now because when you look around, and definitely in the Trinidad and Tobago landscape, we have a number of companies that are family owned and very successful. If we look at Casey Confectionery, we look at SM Jaleel, Southern Sales, Bagwan Singh's. There are several, the McCall Group and how they started, Hadco, and they've been very successful. And I think that for a lot of us, because I belong to a medium, so I fall into that SME category. And it's myself and both my sisters. My father had stepped back a long time ago. He has other businesses. And for us, the question is, here we are. And at what point do we really start considering the succession planning? And it's an important question, especially when you have the next generation who are not as interested in the business. And so it becomes a matter of, do we bring in people who are going to carry this forward? Do we sell it? Do we go on the stock exchange with it? What is the next step? And so I think that for any family-owned business, one of the things that we tend to not pay attention to, because you get caught up when everything is working well, is what happens in the next 10 years. And I think that is one of the areas that we need to address in the discussion today.
Yeah, I unmute you. Yeah, well, fine. So Vishnu, would you need to add on to that? Anything?
Yeah, well, I think for the kind of opening statement, I've been in family-owned businesses since my birth. We can trace it back to 1903 in Nigeria on the Suriname side and in Berbice as well on the Guyana side. One on the trading, and the other side was very much into farming. And over the past 100 years, some of the businesses have stayed sole proprietorships. A number of them have formalized and become enterprises. Our own current company, Action Invest Caribbean, we're now in our 12th year. We do have a board. If we take a look at where we are now, we're heading into our largest investment, a $10 million investment. And now we're considering not just debt financing, we're looking at equity financing and everything that is required to have a company like ours, like many other Caribbean companies, get ready for that level of investment. I think that would be extremely relevant. Over the last 20 years, having worked with so many organizations across Suriname, Guyana, and the Caribbean, you can see certain trends. And I think one of the trends that we often don't pay attention to is the developing country nature that we operate in. And if you think about it, in the developed world, you can really depend a lot more on the external environment. You can depend on the regulators checking in on you, making sure that everything is ready. You get fined if you're not ready. You can expect, when you do an application for power, to that actually to be installed as expected, or a telephone line. You can expect, if the road isn't up to par, that then it affects your business, that in some type of scheduled way, your roads will be taken care of. Those are not some of the luxuries we have in all developing countries. So it also means that enterprises in developing countries actually have to be more governed, internally governed, in order to have a higher likelihood of success. And very often we see that, we read all types of business books, all the textbooks as well. They seem to be written for the developed world, by developed country authors. And, the reality is that 70% of the world's population lives in the developing world. So taking principles, and, when I was doing my MBA, corporate governance was my favorite subject. I think it still is. And it always struck me that, this is really a recipe that's taken out of the developed world. And I think we do our best to apply it here, yet we sometimes don't realize the deficits that we faced, the exploitation which has taken place in developing countries, really putting us in a place today where we have education deficits, infrastructure deficits, healthcare deficits. In countries like Guyana and Suriname, and I'm sure Trinidad and the rest of the Caribbean have faced their own horrors. For a long time, Guyana was under almost a dictatorial rule. In Suriname has experienced coups that have removed governments and just shifted the way in which the country operated. And that is serious trauma for a country. And I can tell you, living in both countries, that the countries have up to today not recovered from that trauma. The level of distrust that was sown between ethnicities, between classes, continues to plague us even today. So I think corporate governance is one of the solutions. I think we as a body do need to educate further and deeper and wider, so that people really do understand that corporate governance doesn't mean somebody snooping in your company and learning the family secrets. It actually means that you have an independent entity that is also paying attention with the best intentions as well of ensuring that there is longevity for the company, and that decisions are tested before they're implemented, which is a luxury that many enterprises in these countries don't have as yet. And potentially the other thing that I see often as well is the lack of financial literacy. Partially comes from our traumatic past, where we had to hide, we had to bend the rules, we had to break the rules. Guyana and Trinidad have our own examples of having to do suitcase trading and walking down the road in Trinidad trying to sell things and then hiding the money from the tax authorities, to such an extent that it's almost seemed to have been ingrained now in our Caribbean DNA to stay below the radar. And thinking that we're doing something good for ourselves, where really that is a recipe for staying small, because when what you submit to the bank differs from what you submit to the tax authority, differs to what you tell the rest of the family members, and it really creates a confusion where there's a lack of trust by these entities to actually further invest into your enterprise to scale it up. And I think that is, one of the biggest reasons why, especially in Guyana, we don't see more family-owned companies getting onto the stock exchange. The level of financial transparency, compliance, and reporting that is needed. And somehow they don't seem to connect the dots that because of their practices, they're staying small. And I think that is, another one of the big responsibilities that we as leaders in this field do need to work on communicating even more and showing them the benefits as well of proper corporate governance. So that's what I wanted to add.
Great.
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes, Dr. Vishnu, that was one of the critical limitations for family-owned businesses to become professionalized, because the trust factor is very, very real. They don't want to let in other talents to come in to see what they're doing and to partake in the operations of the business. So you find that they will remain small for a long time and be comfortable in the space of doing things their own way. But the risk factor, how do we develop more family business to become professionalized so that we can, contribute to employment, bring in, grow the economy and contribute in a positive growth way to the bigger picture of where business really takes a company. And professionalization is fundamentally the way to go. I'm not from a family-owned business, but I do manage quite a few and I do advise quite a few. And a trust factor is the biggest thing, especially when they have to deal with the bigger corporations, bigger suppliers, when the business is now growing and doing more than a 10 million per annum or 20 million per annum, they're going up close to 100 million. They realize that the small capacity that they used to work with can't hold the growth anymore. And as Kiran said, at what point do you decide to become a professionalized organization? And I think what you used to use to manage 10 million, you can't use the same resources to manage $100 million. And so the transition must start there. And how do we get families to trust outsiders to come in? Well, there's no perfect way to bring them to that position, but they will have to find a way to trust somebody to take them through that journey. And if they don't establish that trust, I don't see most of them going expanding, because family-owned business tend to be a bit stubborn and set in their ways to doing the things their own way. And as Dr. Vishnu said, they might present one thing to the bank, one thing to the tax person. They don't want you to come in and see all of that. But an accountant, a trusted accountant, can come in and start correcting the issues first before they present a going forward strategy to the other professionals and talents that can come in and help. So you do your cleanup first internally, and then you present a clean slate for persons to work with. I work in the financial industry, and my company is a family-owned company, and it has been a struggle to get them to a fiduciary compliant position, but they have come because they see the benefits of being compliant. And the more compliant you are, is the more you can access, the more funding you can access, the more larger corporations want to deal with you, and they want you to partner with them on many things. So there is a greater benefit to become professionalized than to just stay family-owned. So whatever issues we have at the family-owned level, the emotional decisions, no KPIs, no monitoring, the commingling of business, family business into family, personal business into the business, those separations has to take place at some point. And professionalizing the business will get you greater benefits. It will take you places. And I continue to encourage my clients and my company that we need to stay on a compliant, to continue to improve. Compliance is a little expensive because you have to You have to do the courses, do the seminars every year, and some small businesses may not have the budget for that, but you can outsource. Outsourcing is also very good for getting a few hours of consultation than to bring it on for full time, which will cost more. So there are a lot of options that the small business can look at, and as I'm saying, all my presentation has been already delivered by different panelists, but I will say that the steps to professionalization is to establish an effective board. And an effective board, you have to look for certain talents, right? So you want to bring in the technology, which Brian told us about this morning, and you want to bring in risk management. You want to bring in somebody who is financially literate. As you know, the panel, Dr. Vishnu would say you need somebody who's financially literate to guide you how to structure your money, and also yes, law. You need legal advice. So if you have a mixture of those talents on your board, you can go places. So I will add that for now.
Right. Is there anything, Dr. Vishnu, you all want to add on that may not have been part of your presentation?
I'm thinking just, the Caribbean belief. I think somehow we've been taught that we are not enough. Sometimes, I've been following as much as I can this week, the session, and it pains me to see that it's just 50 of us here on the call, when really we need to have 5,000 on this call. And even I was telling you that, we are now looking at bringing on equity investors. And I can see the fear in my own board. We have some family members, we have some non-executive directors who've been with us for the last almost 10 years on the board, and we have no other large equity financing, and definitely not what we're considering now to be listed on the stock exchange. But they're all worried about dilution. They're worried about what's this going to do to the level of control, what happens with outside decision makers. So even in my own company, although we teach this, although we consult on this, I now have a whole bit of education to go do with my company. And, step one is we have the brokers all coming in and having sessions with our own current directors and shareholders so they understand the process. And I think sometimes, we think small. We think, oh, when we talk about these $100 million companies, it's a US company, it's a UK company, some European company. We don't think of, oh, wait, we in the Caribbean can do this. And sometimes when we see the big Answer McCall and we see Massey and we see Republic, we think, they're special. They did it when it was a different time. It's not the same way now. And we make all kind of excuses about why it can't be us scaling up, why it can't be us getting to the next level. So I do think we have to confront that scarcity mindset. The education, this is what we're doing here. Kudos to the institute as well. We need to find more ways of amplifying this so that we can also build that self-belief. We need more champions at all stages. The big companies, if I look at the Answer McCall Foundation, the Massey Foundation, I can see that they're making efforts to encourage new entrepreneurs, new creatives to do more in their own sectors. I think we need to find some medium-sized champions, some smaller champions as well, so it becomes more relevant. It always reminds me of, 10 years ago when I studied business incubation in Singapore. One of the key things that they do is they never find mentors that are much larger. They're like 1 or 2 steps and no more than 5 years older than the mentees that they are working with. Because what they have learned is that when the gap is too big, the mentee just makes up a ton of excuses in their head of why it can't be them. So what they've done successfully is find similar sized, not too many steps ahead, people who can pull them. And I think that's a lesson we can take from that area of the world into what we do here. Because even today, I still consider myself a young person, although Kamla has indicated that I've been at this for over 20 years. I still consider myself a very young person. Yet I now start noticing that at the age of 46 in Guyana, I'm seen as a mature, as an OG, as the young people would say it, in this sector now. So I'm doing my best in my own space. I'm doing my best to find people in their 30s, find people in their 20s, and give them as much support as I can give them, because I know that the next wave will more likely listen to them than they will to me. Because the same thing that I may have thought in the past, these Sabga people and these folks from Masi, they were a different time. I now realize people might be looking at all of us here right now on the screen thinking, these guys were lucky. These guys had it easy. So I think that's the type of work I think a lot of us can really engage a lot more in.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, if you go back to the topic, boards, controls, and strategic discipline. And I want to really harp on that word discipline. Because when you think of family-owned businesses and how they evolve small, medium to large, the discipline within the organizations, that is really what sets them apart. And sometimes when we're inside of our entities, we have to understand that you don't get up one morning and decide succession planning or decide we're going to do this. It's not like an overnight event. This is a process. And I find that is one of the things that is missing and lacking with our entrepreneurs and with our small businesses, is the lack of understanding that what you're doing is actually a process towards your growth and to what you are going to do to be able to scale and take the entity to the next level. So in that, we need to really look at understanding ownership versus the operation, versus the governance issues, because owners are not necessarily the managers. They don't have to be, and those who understand governance do not have to be within either. We can also outsource, while everybody has to understand it, and I don't think that those three areas are significantly understood very often. And I think that further complicates the understanding of what do we need to do to be disciplined and get to the next level.
Yes. And just to add, when there's no clear governance structure, no policy in a business, it impacts employees negatively. They have no clear path to no career path in the country, that company. They don't know if they can grow, if they can stay there for 10 years, 15 years. They can't plan. And in some of these small businesses, you have a lot of favoritism from the owner to the staff, and the morale tends to be low. And what I find, there's a lot of high turnover. So ever so often, every 90 days, you're turning over your staff, and the training to get them back up on a level to run the business is sometimes a bit taxing. And so it is a negative impact when there is no governance structure, no policy, nothing to guide the company to make plans for example, 10 years. So staff leave. People come, they learn for a little bit, and they leave because they don't see any way forward in a company that doesn't have any career growth path, for them. And for the owners, and dividends, those profitability rather, the persons don't see the company as something that they can invest in. So the governance structure is very, very important to help with and I'm a big picture kind of person. I come in and I look at the big picture. How can the family-owned business, how can this business contribute to the overall economy and growth?
But I think, just if I may interject, to me, business generally, a key word for me is passion. You have to have the passion for it. And, if we're talking on the business that we are doing, we're talking about initially when you start the business, you in the family business, you want to preserve it, right? How do you carry on that entrepreneurial spirit from the founder? Because most probably the founder is the one who has all the passion. How do you carry that down? Because obviously you're looking generationally. Many instances, people who start a business is very legacy. It's a legacy you want. You're not really too concerned about is somebody going to buy you or not buy you, as the case might be. You might be quite prepared to walk away from that because of the legacy you want to leave. And a big part of it is how is it possible to take what you have as the owner, the entrepreneur, the passion, and build that into the business, so build the governance for the next generation to get there. To me, that's a practical thing that you want to look at. Sorry, I leave it to the experts.
Well, I mean, I think it comes back to what Andrea was saying, right? About staff and training and getting the vision. Because the truth is, not every one of your children is going to have the passion you had when you created it. I mean, I am there right now, right? My son is involved in this part of the business, but not every aspect of it. And he is more, there's another side of the family business that is not media at all. He likes that. That's his, and he has found his passion there. So what I have found is that more and more I have to make sure I continuously are empowering the people I have inside of the organizations, because most organizations do have entrepreneurs. The people who have left my organization, I do not have a high turnover at all. But the 3 or 4 that left, they went and started their own businesses. And we are still friends, right? And I have to keep ensuring that the people who have that kind of passion and drive, that I nurture it the best way I could, because it is going to get to a point where those people, depending on what I choose to do with the entity, will I sell it? Will I give away shares? And if I have to give shares to anybody in this to continue the legacy that I set up, I would want to give it to the people who work here, who have invested in it and who treat it as their own. And that's where I would go first. I also know that they have an understanding of the organization. So I think, when you start a company, it's very important to keep your eye open for the people who have that shared passion and that shared vision and who are really buying into it, and to keep them also motivated. So that is my personal experience of how I'm looking at dealing with it.
If I can add, I think in the beginning of any business, it's really the founder believing that they have a solution that the market requires. And unfortunately, more than half of the time, that's not really the case. The market really didn't want it. And that is where supply and demand comes in. So if the demand is not there, the business dies a slow death, sometimes a fast death. In some cases, when they have done some of the groundwork, or sometimes just because they found something that really solves their own problem that the rest of the world didn't know existed, as it gets out into the world, the demand, becomes very evident, and that then allows them to grow. I think founders who experience that, one of the key things that they can do in the transition to longer term governance is, to some extent, bottling up the passion. And an easy way to bottle up the passion is actually to take a look at the values that drive that passion. If I think about our own organization, being improvement oriented is a big part of the culture that we have. Being client centric is another big area. Finding what technically drives the business, like what's the secret sauce that really drives the business, that gives us a competitive advantage. That is something to be bottled up as well, because on the value side, we only hire people who match the value. They must, of course, have the competence. If we don't see those 4 or 5 values that we hold dearly to us, we don't proceed with a hire. Because from our history, we've discovered that whenever we do make the mistake of saying this is such a fantastic, competent person, they don't have our values, let's still take them in, it's never really worked out, because it becomes a culture clash. We rather have someone who really resonates the value as maybe a 7 out of 10 in terms of competence. It's much easier to train them to get them to the level than to change someone's values, because those values were built up over decades. Changing them in a week or a couple of months is not very likely. And then on the competitive advantage side, it could be something technical, it could be geographic, it could be a whole range of things that actually provide that competitive advantage. Using whatever IP or legal mechanisms or agreements that could be put in place to protect that mechanism. So if you're in the food business, maybe, registering your recipe. If you're in the technology business, getting a patent on your technology. I think those protections need to be put in place, because as you develop those two sides of it, the softer side, the culture side, and the harder technical side, you then now start ending up with something that you can start duplicating, because you can bring more people who are aligned with the culture in, and you can make sure that the strengths that you have keep getting better. You can invest more in better patterns and better ways of delivering the service. And you can start segmenting, because in the beginning, the founder often wears many hats. As you now start growing, you can then start handing off the hats. The hats become departments. The departments get filled up with people. And then you have that longer term ability to step away, because so much of what started off as just the founder is now in so many other people, in the systems, in the governance framework, that it then allows you for more people it allows for more investors to come in. It allows for people to really get clear on why they should participate in the business as a supplier, as a customer, as an investor. And I think that makes it more attractive. And it also makes it more attractive to a founder to realize they can build something that goes beyond them. And especially as Kiran has already mentioned, people don't, nowadays, most of the kids are not interested in the parents' business. I remember, I have one daughter. She got married. I'm going to be a grandfather soon. So now Kamala has more points to score. So what I'm noticing is that when my daughter was growing up, 8, 9, 10, she wanted to be everything except being in the business we were in. And to the parents who are in the room, my coach told me, well, if that's what she wants, why don't you create a scenario or an environment where she gets to experience it? So when she was into the I want to be a doctor phase, I have most of my classmates became medical doctors. I called the one at the Barbies Hospital, say, can I bring my daughter? She'll be with you for the day, just show her around. Of course, that person said yes. Dr. Sharma said yes. I took her at 9 o'clock. By 11, I get a call, Dad, can you please come and pick me up? I asked her, well, why? She said, when you come, how fast can you get there? And then when she's back in the car with me, then she tells me, I only see sick people, and I saw blood, and I saw this. And I told her, what do you think doctors do? Right? Because sometimes we romanticize the doctors and the lawyer. She also went through the lawyer phase. I took her to one of my lawyer friends. I didn't even leave the building as yet. I was talking to some other people in the building. She's calling me. I'm asking, what's wrong? She said, there's some people who coming in here, and I'm really, really scared. Then I had to ask her, who do you think lawyers deal with? Law-abiding citizens who never do anything wrong? They deal with people who often find themselves in some breach of the law. So what I did, and what I would encourage all parents to do, is give your kids the experience. Because if you don't, and you say, I want you to be in the business, they keep romanticizing the doctor and the lawyer and the accountant and everything else that has been romanticized. And then, after a while, she recognized that she grew up in this business. She loves it. She understands it. And today she is part of the company as well. She did branch off into doing something more HR oriented, which I'm very happy with. Yet it came from her experiences of actually living life and experiencing various roles. So just wanted to share that as well.
That was excellent. I think your daughter got some good experience there. But congratulations on being a grandfather. It's the best thing since sliced bread, really, really.
Thank you.
Anybody has anything they would like to add?
Well, I just want to share that at 46, Vishnu is too young to be a grandfather. So
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Young grandpa.
I just want to add that I think passion is the beginning for a lot of family-owned business. Something that you're naturally good at, you turn it into an enterprise. And for my business, my boss is a people person. He can infect a room. And so customer service was developed around that and is one of our number one competing edge as a remittance and cambio organization, because we are now the number one locations for MoneyGram and remittance, because we have a turnaround time for transactions, and persons would leave like from Portmore, if you're familiar with Jamaica, Portmore to Kingston, just to come to our location to get their remittance services. So passion is good, and it can be deployed in the company in such a way that it infects the employees and they use it as a tool for excellence. So every business needs some passion. Every business, every family-run business started with passion, something that you're good at. So
Angela,
I
I
agree.
just would like to make a point, along with what Andrea has just said and having that passion.
Sure.
To build on something Vishnu said that I really never thought about before, because we do take a lot around us for granted. So as he said, a lot of the textbooks that are written, a lot of the models that we try to employ really come from first world countries, written by first world writers whose experiences are entirely different to ours. And so understanding our own environment, and as when he spoke about some of the challenges that Guyana as a country has faced, and Suriname as well, which I wasn't aware of, and I thought I knew a lot about the region, and understanding that there will be lingering trauma that impacts the way we view things and therefore the way we make decisions. I loved his example, especially of the suitcase trade between Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago. Those of us my age would be familiar with it.
I was there too.
Yes, yes. So I'll put Vishnu back to he was a little boy at the time when that was happening. But he's quite right. We have to find a way, and I know this is a challenge for us, particularly here at CCGI. We have to find a way to document our own stories. We have to find a way to write about our own environment that helps bring these realities to the forefront so that we come up with the solutions that navigates our landscape in a way that allows us to deal with these issues that Vishnu has identified. You see it, the fear among people about growing too big too quickly.
Yes.
The uncertainty of handling situations because there are really no models that helps you to see the stages to this and what you do from one step to the other. So you know what? I am also putting this challenge all out there for all our CCGI members. First one, make sure you're a member. And two, let's all get more involved to amplify a lot of our discussions. Let's find ways to capture the case stories. Let's publish these things and let's help make sure that we are building a much stronger foundation for that next generation that is immediately behind us. Yes, Vishnu.
So Kamala, I just wanted to interject there because the TT Chamber actually has started. We've embarked on a project to do that, to capture case stories of family-owned businesses throughout the region. So I urge you
Well,
all.
the TT Chamber would probably do it for Trinidad and Tobago, Kiran.
We're doing region. No, we're actually doing regional. We're doing regional. Media Institute of the Caribbean. Remember, I'm
Right,
wearing
so
two
not
hats.
TT Chamber, okay.
So TT Chamber, no, TT Chamber is doing it, but they are doing it for the region. And they've started the process. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that because we've been working through other colleague chambers regionally.
Okay, yes.
I just
Well done.
want
Sorry, I do know that you had started with the Sasha story, because I think I saw that one. So yes, important for us to capture these things. Sorry, go ahead, Vishnu.
I would just also, Brian mentioned his book earlier. I was fortunate to receive a copy from last week. It is The Governing Intelligence. So I'm quarter way to the book, so I can't tell you that I've read it completely. But the point is that uh, I think one of the ways in which all of us could contribute is to actually write our own stories in the forms of lessons. Because if we want people to learn better, we already know that it's more likely that they'll learn and act from based on people that they know. I'm so happy that Brian wrote this book. I know Brian. I know he's an expert. Now I actually have Brian's thoughts here and I will go through it. And I believe this will be more relevant to me as a Caribbean person, that then something that might be maybe word for word written by someone sitting somewhere in Poland, and I might think, that might not be for me. Just because it's written by Brian, and similarly, the content that is created by all of us will most likely have a much bigger impact on our audiences or networks than anyone else. And again, I'm not telling you this because um, I want to give you homework. I've given myself this homework as well, and it's been almost a year of just pulling together case studies, figuring out what works, what doesn't work in this region. And I think that's something that if we can all put that on our to-do list, I'm sure if I were to go into your Google Drive or your OneDrive, you already have so much content there that you need to structure in a way that it makes sense now for people to say, oh, I see how Angela did this. I see how she did that. And she did it in the Caribbean. It makes it a lot more believable to the people who really need this information.
Mhm.
But I'm going to tell you something. I've been challenged so many times about writing, and it's just not me. I'm sorry. So I said, too bad in the story. But I
Well,
guess
now you have AI. You could connect it to your content and ask it.
I know.
Yeah.
Very
Okay.
good.
But I do want to say, Vishnu, I was supposed to collect a copy of that book from Brian while I was there in Suriname, but didn't get a chance to. But I've had conversations with him about us having a session to highlight the contents of his book. So we do amplify it around the Caribbean region with what are the strategies that he would have developed and tested against our regional culture. So we'll do our part in that way to continue to allow the Caribbean region to have a voice that speaks for what our own particular experiences are. And we'll help Angela one day to get that story out too.
Good luck to you.
Yes. And I have to say, I'm really, really, truly enjoying this panel because if we are to reach that stage of professionalizing and really growing to become businesses that are significant, that one can deal with the volatility that's happening in today's world, but also be able to expand our footprint so we can be globally recognized. It does require us to identify all these weaknesses that currently plague us.
Yeah. And I wanted to just raise, another point because we've been talking about the discipline and how we get family businesses to get to the next level. And there are many structures. And so I wanted to ask my fellow panelists, as well what they thought, because having advisory boards to me is always a good thing to do, especially in a family-owned business, especially for small and medium. And I feel that in the experience I have had dealing with businesses in Trinidad and Tobago, I don't feel that they have a lot of advisory boards. And so that's one of the recommendations I wanted to make, as to how we achieve this strategic discipline that we're seeking. And I thought I would ask you all what your opinions were on it as well.
I think in our case, especially in Guyana, and I did hear from some of the panel on the public sector, for example, we have a problem where we don't have many people trained in corporate governance. We don't have many chartered directors as well. So very often it is friends and family, and in the public sector, it's political party members who get put in those positions. And I always recommend to persons, if someone is offering you a seat on the board, first of all, should have had an NDA in place. You should have seen the TOR. If it's an agency, you should have read the act that brought that agency into being so that you understand your responsibilities. Yet most people seem very surprised when I give them that advice, and they've already accepted, and they have no clue what the rules of the organization are. And then they behave in these organizations the same way they behave in their home entity, by thinking they now have the right to walk into the organization and tell people what to do, because they don't understand how board governance works. So that is currently one of the things that we continue to lobby on, to make sure as well that even in the companies that we're currently setting up boards and advisory boards, we even have some sole proprietorships, billion-dollar companies, sole proprietorships, that because they're not incorporated, they don't have that legal structure for setting up an actual board. We're setting up advisory boards for them. Some of them, especially in Guyana, stay sole proprietorships because the taxation regime encourages that. Because if they were incorporated, they would have to pay 40% taxes or 2% turnover tax, versus staying a sole proprietorship where they pay about 25% taxes. So this is also where, as a country, if we don't take a look at our tax systems and what it encourages and what it discourages, we can continue to create more of the lack of corporate governance instead of what we actually want. And this happens, way too often. So I believe that the education, I think we do at the institute, we do the trainings. I think intro level courses, like really introduction 3-hour courses that break it down into normal everyday language, is probably a step one, because most of the founders, the regular businesses, don't speak the language we speak here. They speak very much about, I have to watch this thing going well, and who are these outsiders? And so we have to really break all of this down into normal everyday language in a very introductory way, and really blast that out a lot more so people can understand this where they are.
Mhm. Vishnu, I wanted to respond to that particularly because you are very, very, very right. There is need for us to teach from the basics, and over the years we have come to realize where the gaps are and stuff. So for this year, we have in fact been engaged very closely with the Cropper Foundation on a project to do governance training for nonprofit organizations. And that has proven to be a really, really rewarding experience. We got such tremendous feedback from the nonprofit sector about many of the things they've never considered about their governance structure and how they're actually moving forward. So, and we have been able to place that on Moodle. So it's on-demand training that's really in bite-sized pieces. So exactly what you have in mind. We have started developing that, and having done it successfully for the nonprofit sector, we are now going to expand that to look at, if you're training governance officers, start from the very, very first stage, and do it again in similar bite-sized pieces, so persons can do it on demand and build their understanding. So we should have, over a short period of time, people who are speaking the same language, who are understanding the concepts of governance, and therefore we could move to another stage. So I really appreciate that observation on your part, because it's very much in alignment with what we have found too.
And can connect with all the BSOs and give it to them as a free course that they can give to their members, that they can promote and give to their members, just to start the momentum, more people getting educated.
Well, that is what the Cropper Foundation did, in fact. It was given as scholarships to persons, and we do have about 200 people who actually took advantage of that and engaged in the training. And so, but we also have to be very careful about what we give for free, because that is taken so for granted and not valued. and abused in some cases. So it's a learning experience as we go along. How do we ensure that we meet people's needs and that they are able to gain the value that we are trying to offer? So I'd like to hear a little bit from Andrea. Andrea, we haven't done much work with Jamaica just yet, to be able to understand where they're at. But I know Jamaica too would have had a similar type of unique cultural experience as Vishnu has described, that we have kind of covered Trinidad, Guyana, and Suriname so far. Are you seeing similar issues with the small entrepreneurs in Jamaica wanting to avoid formal systems because they want to avoid taxation rules, or simply sometimes not understanding, where their growth opportunities are? Because again, we all have this issue of trust. Who do we share our information with? Who do we allow into our boardroom that would have access to our financials?
Yes, it is very, very much so a fundamental aspect of not trusting the big boys, then the big system. They're afraid once you mention the tax administration department, they start to pull back, and they will quickly tell you, I didn't make any profit last year. Why should I file my taxes? Why should I file any taxes? I didn't make any profit. But that's where the education comes in, to let them know that it doesn't matter if you make a profit or not. Once you have a company in the system, you have to follow through on filing your returns to tell the government, okay, I made $100 this year, and I paid out 120, so I made a loss. So yes, they are very much afraid of becoming formal because of all of those fiduciary responsibilities. Jamaica is becoming a compliant-driven economy now because of all of our frauds and corruption issues. We are now becoming a very compliant. Our Bank of Jamaica is channeling all of those compliance measures through the bank, so it affects you at your savings account, how you lodge money, how you deposit, how you withdraw. You can't withdraw a certain amount, you can't lodge certain amount. So there's a lot of restrictions that are coming into the way of doing business and forcing persons to finally come to the table to say, we're going to become a little bit more professionalized. Not fully. Some of them are partially there, but they are coming because the system, how it is being driven, know your customer, the Money Laundering Act, all of those things are being enforced. Every week we get a sanctions list from the International Monitoring Board to tell us who we're not supposed to be doing business with. So we have to practice now, especially in my company, a very robust compliance program where you're trained every year. You have to prove to the Bank of Jamaica that you have taken some form of training course annually, and if you don't, they will mark you down. So the entire business industry is becoming more compliant driven, and it's just a matter of time. Well, everything is going digital right now, so a lot of people will be left behind, and that is the scariest part, because the older generation are not tech savvy, and everything is now online banking. They're phasing out checks. They're telling you that you can't write checks anymore, and you can't write it for a certain amount. So everything is changing and lining up to becoming a digital world. And my fear is that a lot of small family businesses will be left behind, left out there, can't do business, or maybe have to close down because they're not compliant to what is required to move forward. Yeah.
I think that is such a critical point, Andrea. So Vishnu, I'd want you to address it in a little bit, but Angela, so we are within this last half hour, so we'll open it up in a little bit for the Q&A. But Vishnu, this point that Andrea has made is really and truly so critical, where a lot of the founders, the ones who are running the small businesses, are persons who are not as familiar with the technology, and yet the world is hurtling forward with online businesses and different ways that means you cannot function and you cannot move your business forward. How do you advise we get past those kinds of challenges for our SMEs?
I think Jamaica has done a fantastic job, better than most Caribbean countries, at incentivizing compliance, especially if you look at their junior stock exchange, where companies with a turnover of, I think, over $1 million US is the threshold, are allowed to participate with a 20% float. Yet the thing that really causes them to participate is that they get a corporate tax waiver for the first 5 years.
Yeah.
And if those companies do the math and they save I think, can't remember your exact corporate tax rate. I think it's somewhere between 20 and 40. Yeah,
30%.
30%. So if they save that 30% for 5 years, that's almost like recapitalizing the entire company. You end up with, two sets. Your balance sheet almost doubles just because you're saving that corporate tax by becoming compliant. I think there's a whole watch list, 11 things that you must have before you qualify to be listed there, and they make it extremely attractive. Of course, I believe that as a business person, the waiver of 30% corporate tax rate is already good. I can tell you that in Guyana in 2021, when the government removed corporate taxes on education and medical institutions, we have our own company, which is an education institution as a company. We have reinvested all of that in the company, and it has just accelerated our growth. So I can tell you that from the Guyana case, it really works. And I can see from Jamaica, you can see how active their junior stock exchange is, because companies have a real incentive to become formalized, to operate with a level of corporate governance that's needed. And then Andrea still mentions that you still have so many companies that still want to fly below the radar. So you always have that tension between the two. And yet, if we also take a look at it, all the major conferences in Guyana and even in Suriname, we see the Jamaican Stock Exchange participating. So they're even here in Guyana helping with that education, which I can only imagine. I've only been to Jamaica on holidays. I've never really participated from a heavy business perspective. I can only imagine how much work the stock exchange and from a governance perspective is being done in Jamaica. So I think they have some results. They have the results to show for that, and it's a little bit of a model that we can use in the rest of the Caribbean to incentivize it. Because yes, a government may lose 25, 30, 40% taxes for a number of years. The good thing is that when they do come on stream to pay their corporate taxes, it should be much larger than what they started off in year one. And the second big benefit is the employment that they create, because a growing company with no corporate taxes to pay can do a lot more, not just for their current employees, but they can also hire a lot easier. And I think they'll also be able to serve more. Another big disadvantage of Caribbean countries, most Caribbean countries, is our very small populations. And if you do the research that I've worked on, and what I've discovered is that you need populations of about 3 million to 5 million for a manufacturing entity, for example, to really develop economies of scale. And that's why many of our companies in Guyana, we stay very small, because we're thinking about the region or just our country. When I say the region, one of the regions in Guyana. And that's a different mindset if you think about Trinidad. In the 70s and 80s in Trinidad, their manufacturing sector decided that when we do manufacturing in Trinidad, we're not thinking about for the 1.3 million people in Trinidad. We are thinking minimum 15 million people CARICOM. So when we set up a factory, we spread that investment in the factory. When I say we, I mean we, the Trinidadians, spread that investment in the factory over 15 million. Whereas that same factory in Guyana, I'm thinking, well, 800,000 people have to pay for this factory. So my unit of investment per portion in the population is much higher than a Trinidadian company. And then Trinidad also had the advantage of subsidized energy, so lower electricity cost. And they also had for 100 years a higher level of skill developed in their oil and gas industry that I think really benefited other industries as well, because then so many more people were technically trained, already technically compliant, understood governance at a different level. And that has helped so many more industries. So there are many good things that we've done in the Caribbean as well, Jamaica, Trinidad, for example, that we really need to start pulling together and say, okay, these could be some roadmaps for individual markets.
Yeah,
So
if I might add to that, because when we're looking at the structure, and because one of my businesses are in Jamaica, my family has been doing business there since 1990. I find that the way the government approaches it, it's a lot more nurturing than in other places. And Andrea, I don't know if you get that too, but even when you look at nonprofits, because that's where my nonprofit currently is, and the way they started to integrate the compliance requirements, they did not do it all at once. It was a step by step, and it's like a phased approach. And I see that too, even with other entities. So when I look at even what JAMPRO, how they have approached, how they build out the businesses. And I think it's one of the things that we could learn from in other countries in our region, because of the circumstances in Jamaica and what happened in the 80s and looking at the history, and how much the private sector was involved in rebuilding what Jamaica is today. I think there are very valuable lessons in it. And I wanted to make that point because obviously with what we are doing, we have to advocate for this in our own societies to move our economies forward. But I think it's an important point to note.
I just want to, I want to add or to ask Dr. Vishnu this question. The Jamaican culture and the Trinidadian culture and way of doing business, do you see the two working seamlessly together?
You see, if we actually, I don't know if you know Guyana's full name. Guyana's full name is actually the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. And sometimes I think CARICOM's name could have been the cooperative grouping named CARICOM, but then it's always the Cooperative Republic of people who don't like to cooperate. Because we often have so much talent in various pockets, so much things that are working, but then we want to engage in this pissing contest of we do this better and we do that better instead of actually collaborating. And I think that's our biggest weakness. I think it's part of our colonial heritage as well, where the differences between us were always used to make us compete, make us forget the bigger picture and just focus on internal conflict. I think some of that is still deeply ingrained. And it takes a few people. Like I wouldn't call it a struggle. We've been really battling with the Suriname Guyana Chamber to create something bigger between just Suriname and Guyana because they're so similar. Together they could probably achieve 3 to 5 to 10-fold more than if they do it individually. But there's so much internal pushback on both sides for reasons that are not beneficial. They're beneficial to a few who benefit from the way things currently are. So that's probably also something that happens across the Caribbean. There are people who benefit from the way things currently work. So it will take, similarly, on the opposite side, it will take talented people who know to solve problems to start talking to each other and then moving it along. Because again, if I use the SGCC as an example, we've been at this for 3 years. And we're now running conferences. We meet with all the stakeholders. We solve problems like on a daily basis between both countries. And it's a full-time job. There's a secretariat, there are 100 members, and we could have also decided to, these two countries really don't like each other. They keep harassing each other over maps. Instead of just solving it, we love harassing each other instead of just coming to the table or taking it to court and getting a resolution. Even if you think we hear about us being oil and gas countries now. But I don't know if you know that in the late 90s, when Guyana first sent for exploration on that border and the water, they were evicted by Suriname. They couldn't solve it bilaterally. They went to court. The court actually drew a line right through the middle. And just years after that, on both sides of that new line, Exxon discovered oil for Guyana and Total Energies discovered oil for Suriname. Had they not taken it to court, had they not decided to solve it in the early 2000s, neither country would be celebrating all we celebrate today. And there are some other disputes going on right now, some other matters that are unresolved, claims that are being made. Let us behave like adults. Like I can't be living next to Andrea and tell her the fence is not in the right place. Maybe I tell her one time, she doesn't take me seriously. She thinks, oh, Vishnu is just joking. I say it the second time. I go on the newspaper, I say it. I go on television, I say it. Andrea can't keep also harassing me because she can run to the newspapers as well. She can go to the television as well. Andrea should go to court and say, cease and desist and get the formal, document and finish, continue being neighbors. Because I might actually believe that it is true. Like what I'm telling you, I might believe it is true. And that's what's happening between countries in the Caribbean. We strongly believe in the thing that we have told ourselves for such a long time that we are unable to listen to someone else who just as strongly believes in what they hold dearly. So I think it's talking to each other. I think forums like this, if I look at the guest list here that you have here today, you have the leaders of the Caribbean from a thought perspective. I would want it not to end here. Let us talk to each other and figure out how can we create some movement. And that is what comes to mind. And Andrea, I don't know if I completely answered it. I think yes, we can work together if we actually sit together and listen to each other.
Yes. I would love to see a Caribbean stock exchange where all the family-owned businesses that have grown are put on the Caribbean stock exchange, and you can invest in companies and open up capital, open up the capital, because we have a lot of capital in the Caribbean. We're just not, as you say, talking to each other and trusting each other to come together and do business. Yeah.
And the IDB is currently running a project. I don't know if any of the people on the call are there. We're learning more and more about equity financing. And then you have this long list of people who want to invest in the Caribbean. And the biggest problem they have is we don't have investable projects. There's nowhere in the Caribbean where we can just make a call and say, hey, what projects do you have? How much money do you need? And why? Because of the same things we're talking about now. Our companies have not put themselves in the place that they can demonstrate good corporate governance, that they can show good financial compliance. And investment is in the Caribbean, outside of the Caribbean. Money is sitting there waiting to be invested in projects that have not been formulated properly as yet.
So true, Dr. Vishnu, because in Jamaica, the SMEs have not taken up. There's so much grant funding, and because they're not compliant or have taken on any fiduciary structure in their businesses, they have not been able to access 50% of what is there. So it's just sitting there.
Yeah, well, the Caribbean Economic Forum just launched 2 weeks ago in Barbados, and that was actually why it was done, to address this problem. Money is out there, even outside of the region, not just within, but outside of the region, and how we got the projects to come in. So, I mean, for anybody on this call wanting to know more, and I will be tapping into both of you, Vishnu and Andrea, since we raised it here. Kamala, you too, because Caribbean corporate governance will have to get involved. But we're actually trying to fill that gap. And I wanted to say that openly here, because I think it is urgent now when we look at the geopolitics.
Thanks. Angela, we have quite a few comments in the chat. Would you like me to run through it very quickly for you?
Please do.
Yes, because we have just 15 minutes remaining, and I do want our participants to have a voice as well. But since it's a lot, we'll run through it very quickly. We started with Saron Bailey saying differences between financials presented to the bank and those presented to BRs. BIR seems to be a cultural problem here in Trinidad and Tobago, and may very well be for other Caribbean countries too. Colin Supinchow said, I like what Dr. Doerga mentioned about the approach in Singapore. For many SMEs, there may be a need for the owner to have at least one trusted advisor, someone who is trusted, who has influence, and who has the governance and strategic mindset. And I could say that we have, in fact, seen that from presentations for family-owned businesses in the past. Those we have J. Rowan Son from Jamaica. It's fourth generation. And why? Because they had that very specific thing. A trusted advisor who started with the foundation way back when, so that a proper foundation was laid for the family. And then, okay, let's move on to Derek, who also agreed with Dr. Doerga with regard to thinking and acting globally, despite our relatively small size. He said one way to do this is to be present and active at the international table when such policies and standards are being developed. Then Shelley Ben was asking whether a culture clash always has to be a bad thing. She said, should your culture and values be static, or should they be challenged to avoid having an echo chamber as you grow and develop your family business? Andrea then clarified culture clash between employer and employee. And Shelley said the company's culture and the employee's culture. So the company's culture may not always be the best thing and may need to be challenged. And then Vishnu answered in the chat, we call it our agreed culture that is tested for getting us to our vision, the opposites to our culture and not helpful. There's quite a lot more in the chat with respect to the differences in the culture. And so thank you, Colleen. Colleen Davis is in the group as well. Colleen is with Vinny Apuan, which is a strategic partner for Cropper Foundation in the CSO Ignite project that I mentioned earlier for nonprofit organizations. Thank you for the commendation, Colleen, that in fact we do have excellent content for our micro-credential for the nonprofit organizations. There's something that I wanted to highlight, and this is from Sherry Ann Joseph, and we'll come back to the panel. And I see Colin has his hand. So Colin, we'll come to you then after this comment from Sherry Ann. She says Trinidad operates with a crab in the barrel mentality. We have to come together as one first before we can successfully cooperate with other countries. Oh, and Quantrell just reminded us, with that 15-minute mark, the survey link is in the chat. We do want your feedback as well, so don't forget that, right? Colin, let's get your comment or question quickly.
Yeah, I have a couple of comments. Let me apologize up front. I may be going in a number of different directions, right? But I'll be very quick. I think there's something that Dr. Doerga mentioned. I hope I pronounced your name the right way. And he made reference to CARICOM and cooperative and so forth. And there was something that Andrea mentioned about stock exchange and so forth. I would say generally from my experience, there are many companies, entrepreneurial businesses who have the size and scale and the success to list, but they would not list, right? And it has nothing to do with taxes. I don't think that's a primary driver. I just think that we have too many stock exchanges. This has been a pet peeve for the Caribbean Chamber of Commerce, right? And Kiran, you probably know about this a lot. And regulations are set up in a way where if the individual entrepreneur who has success and scale and a track record can find alternative forms of financing, they will go there. Because the purpose of the stock exchange is a currency for capital. It's a capital raising project. And if it comes with too much pain and it doesn't come with enough upside, right? And it's obviously for the owner to see the upside, we have to ask ourselves this question: why is it that they're not coming to the stock exchange, right? And I don't think it's taxes. I don't think, even in circumstances where in Trinidad we've given a lot of tax incentives to attract smaller businesses onto the stock exchange, it does not work. So there's a deeper issue. I can't solve that issue now. When I think of SMEs and family businesses, I have two other comments. And there are many other comments. With the SMEs, there are many SMEs that are small, very small individual businesses that are the heartbeat of the country. And many of them can't access credit. Many of them, we talk about these entities or these individuals not paying taxes. Many of them, I don't think, would have monthly, quarterly, or annual financial statements. So the way they operate is they operate based on cash flow. I have a couple of employees. I have a business. I need to live. I need to eat. I need to educate my family and so forth. And once I have surplus cash flow at the end of the week, at the end of the month, or at the end of the quarter, I am surviving. There's a structural problem in our small fragmented markets. And I think a number of governments, Trinidad for sure, have embarked on a number of government initiatives to provide financial incentives, training incentives, but by and large, it has not worked. The impact has been very small. So there's something again there that's structural. I can't define it exactly. And then the last comment I'd make is that we have one or two, well, not one or two, we have a number of entrepreneurs in the marketplace, right, who started in one business, pivoted, and who built tremendous businesses. Two come to mind, and they're more than two. One is Butch Stewart in Jamaica. And Andrea, you probably will know better than me, right? I may have this wrong, but my understanding is he started in air conditions and he built sandals, okay? It's now taken over by his son. Butch Stewart passed away a couple of years ago, right? And the second one, and it's a private business. Sandals is a huge business. It's Kiffin Simpson in Barbados. And I know this one a little bit better. I did some work for him. He started in automotive parts and cars, and he pivoted towards downstream energy, okay? And essentially established a company called Sol. And without going into detail, these two individuals built very, very successful businesses, which were essentially family-owned businesses. And when I look at them, what I see is the following, right? And I think that this is what is something that's not recognized in family-owned businesses, right? They were not successful because they understood the scale of the opportunity, I think, in hotels or petroleum. And they didn't move into those areas because they had this great plan. I think they moved because they understood how to build businesses, which is, so I'm not saying they had no knowledge of energy and hospitality. I'm not saying that. I'm saying they understood fundamentally how to build businesses. And what Mr. Stewart and Mr. Simpson brought from their original businesses, what I will call the transferable capabilities, is they understood capital allocation. They understood supply chain because they learned it in their initial businesses. They understand customer focus in particular, right? They understood regional relationships. They understood how to negotiate acquisitions. And they understood how to manage large businesses, right? So these are just a couple of comments I had, right? There's a huge spectrum, a huge range when you move from SMEs to family-owned businesses. And some family-owned businesses are SMEs, and some family-owned businesses are like some of the most formidable businesses that are regionally owned in this region, right? There's a wide spectrum, and the challenges and the issues operate across the entire spectrum. So those are the comments I just wanted to make, Kamla, from what I could see. Very different circumstances, and very interesting. And I suppose the issue is, if I think about it, and I just end here, Doctor, is at the bottom of the ladder, the very vulnerable, there are a number of initiatives. And hopefully at some point in time, we could brainstorm and come up with something that we could do and we could carry to governments. There must be a way where the countries and the private sector can have more impact in this area, because that is an area that needs support and need help. And as I mentioned, needs a trusted advisor, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Colin. Angela, we have 5 minutes remaining for this panel discussion. So maybe we can ask our panelists to give their closing thoughts as they wrap up based on the comments from Colin as well.
I just want to say that I think those comments Colin made were excellent comments. So we'll now hand over to the panelists. Your closing remarks in relation to that.
Kiran, do you want to go first?
Okay. All right. Okay, that's the way we
Ladies first.
started. Yeah, Colin, thank you for that. I want to close by making making a couple of comments on what you said. I think it's a really good way to end. The other thing you missed though with those men who built these companies, and we have women, Helen Bagwin Singh built hers. We have Angela here who has built out her company. They hire smart people. They don't think they know it all. I think it's a key thing, especially when we're talking about family-owned businesses, when you want to, many of our people who started want to keep it under lock and key, right? The other thing is that I do believe that the stock market is daunting and we need to look at new financial models, but new viability models as well. We cannot talk about just, how we financing entities, and we have angel capital, and we have VCs and that kind of thing, but it's also the viability, and there's a degree of accountability that has to come in. So a lot of the government incentives, the reason why they fail is, yes, you could give an entrepreneur $10,000 like we gave to over 1,000 of them in Trinidad, but when you don't give them the support systems like the mentorship, right? Understanding KPIs, you don't track them for at least a 6-month period, it is going to fall down, and you're going to have a lot of people who think they are born failures. And so very often that kills the spirit of entrepreneurship that they started off with. So I think when we're talking about those kinds of structures, we need to look at it more holistically than just the financial aspect. And finally, let me just end by saying that, we have to understand legacy versus strategy when we're thinking about family-owned businesses. And that comes back to the topic of this panel, boards and controls and strategic discipline. And everybody on top who are owners need to understand that there is a big difference between legacy and strategy. And what do we really want this entity to be 10 years from now? And sometimes the questions will be hard and the answers will be more difficult and very emotional, but we have to face them. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiran.
Thanks,
Andrea?
Kiran. So,
Andrea, you're muted. Andrea, you're muted. You have to unmute.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I just want to say family businesses build legacy, and professional governance protect those legacies by combining all the different variables, technology with sound governance, strategic discipline, and ethical leadership. Family businesses can now transcend generations, and that is what the Stewart family has done, so that they don't have to bring in outsiders. So the uncertainty to creating sustainable business in today's world must start with professionalizing the family business and bringing in corporate governance. Yeah.
Okay, Vishnu.
Yep, I think it's a really good lesson in how companies evolve. Because if you think about Mr. Stewart and Mr. Simpson, seniors who started off in air conditioning and automotive, there are many, many businesses who are doing air conditioning and automotive now that will not end up in the path that these companies have ended up in. And it just makes you think as well, what was the difference? And if you really study their pathways, and I was fortunate to meet Mr. Stewart Jr. 2 weeks ago when they launched here in Guyana, their automotive division. It's the open-mindedness, it's the willingness to collaborate, because even the latest investment by the Stewart Group, the Sandals Group here in Guyana, is in collaboration with 2 other partners that are operating here. Whereas many companies may want to do it on their own, it requires a level of open-mindedness. And, a word that comes to mind is ignorance as well. And all of us live in ignorance of what we don't know. And even worse, that we don't know what we don't know. And I think this is one of the things that these folks have done. And all successful people realize that, first of all, that they are ignorant. I am ignorant. And I then can become enlightened by trusted advisors, by mentors, by coaches that can open up the window for me to see what I don't know and that I don't know, and then I can choose. And I think that's a lesson that I think we should all take with us because I wish there was a magic formula where we could just make all Caribbean people successful. It still takes work, and the first bit of work is realizing how little we know and starting to choose and find sources so that we can do better. But I really enjoyed the conversation. I think this is much needed, and that the same advice that these companies in Barbados that they've used to grow and scale of educating themselves and collaborating. I think that's a lesson we can all take from them as well.
Thank you. So Kiran, Andrea, and Dr. Vishnu, it was really enlightening, the wisdom of this group, together with the comments that have come from our participants. So I think we had a very, very good session. I think we've all walked away from here being a little more knowledgeable and a bit, I would say, more conscious of some of the things that, I mean, I'm going to take away it in certainly because I look at legacy, but, also looking at the governance and everything, because, you really want to pass down as much as, but I'm one of those that I always believe higher people are brighter than you, for sure, if you're going to survive. So thank you all very much. I guess we are at the top of the hour, right? Kamla, over to you.
Halfway down. Thank you so much, Angela. And thank you to our panel. I really, really, truly enjoyed this panel discussion as well. And I too learned a whole lot. And I'm heartened by what we are doing to continue the hard work here at CCGI so that we continue to bring these kinds of very brilliant people to share their experience and knowledge with us so that we can leapfrog in the region in terms of our ability to grow. So we will take a short break and then we will come back with panel 2 for today, which is leading through disruption, governance and risk for SMEs. Our panelists will be Sanjay Pierre Chase, an attorney at law, former president of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Commerce. We also have Emerson John Charles. He is an innovation expert in the ISO National Innovation. He's chairman also of Innovation Association of Trinidad and Tobago. And we'll have Rayad Singh, who is sitting in for Dr. Mikhail Mohammed. Rayad is the Chief Operations Officer at Farm and Function Limited, and our moderator will be Brendan King, who is one of our directors here at CCGI. So let's bring the curtain down on this panel discussion. Quantrell, do we have the video ready to honor our sponsors?
Yes, we do.
Thank you so much. So we will be going on a short break now. We return at the top of the hour. So we have just about 25 minutes or so for us to take a break. And then we come back with panel 2.